We're here. Sorry we're a couple minutes late. Welcome inside Land of 10 Live. Sam Radin, Chris Howard. Hope you like this view of us today. You can see a lot of this one. Looking forward to talking some Big Ten football and a little bit of basketball.
A little bit of basketball. A lot happened this weekend. So, yeah, we'll cover a little bit of that as well.
Now, I'm trying to think. I haven't seen you since Valentine's Day. We got a PG audience here, but a good holiday hat at the Howard home?
Yeah, we did, cooked a little dinner, took the wife out later for a movie, went to go see Black Panther, which was an awesome movie, and just kind of relaxed after that, man.
That sounds good.
That's what old people do, though.
Hey.
Dinner and movies, that's it.
As long as it makes her happy. It's good. Sounds good. I didn't do any of that stuff. I just have a 1-year-old. I sit at home. Anyways, that's not what you guys came here to talk about. You guys came here to talk about Big Ten football and basketball and such. And let's hit you up with our quick slants here. Here's what we got coming up on the program. Plenty more as the coaching carousel continues to spin around in the Big Ten. Something that Chris told you was coming. We'll touch on that in just a second. Our look at the state of the program series continues as well today. 2 programs for us to cover. We'll talk about the Wisconsin Badgers, and then we'll also take our look at the Maryland Terrapins, talk about the DJ Durkin era as it continues there in College Park. And then, as always, we have plenty of time for our viewer interaction. But before we get to that, we'll also spend some time with some off-the-field news, some of the comings and goings here as we get set for the NFL Combine, etc. It'll call our Around the League wrap-up. So let's get things kicked off talking about that coaching carousel. And you said it last week, Chris, Jim McElwain looked like he was coming to Michigan. It is now official. Chris Lowe has reported that. Michigan has acknowledged it. Jim Harbaugh has agreed with it as well, and he will coach the wide receivers. What kind of a fit is it, Jim McElwain going to Michigan?
You know what? I think it'll be a good fit. I mean, for Jim Harbaugh, I mean, he really needs someone who's dedicated to go coach the wide receivers. The first 2 years in Jim Harbaugh's offense, you saw the receivers in his offense taking a dramatic jump. When Jed Fish was there, the receivers got instantly better in 2015 throughout 2016. And then you look at 2017 season, you didn't have a dedicated wide receiver coach, and of course, you produce non-offensive passing touchdowns. So I think it's a good fit for Michigan. They need another guy in there, another creative guy to go with that brain trust, and I think it's a good fit for Michigan, and it should pay dividends offensively.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that personnel group that Michigan has coming back. Just sneaking a peek there on Land of 10 Live. If you guys want to sound off on Jim McElwain to Michigan, we get to your comments. But I think about Tariq Black is a kid who got hurt. I think just maybe 2 or 3 games into the season, they gave him a medical red shirt. Pretty highly recruited guy. Michigan has some talent to work with there at the receiver position. But how does it gel and how does it fit into that Jim Harbaugh offense, I guess, is kind of the question.
Well, I think that's what we all want to know, is because I think with Jim Harbaugh's offense, as much talent as he has at the wide receiver position with Tariq Black, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Kakora Crawford, Eddie McDoom, and a host of other guys, you have to find ways to get those guys the ball. And I think when you bring a guy like Jim McElwain into the offense, who helped Alabama to 2 national championships as their offense coordinator, I think that only helps you build more around the talent that you already have. It's too much talent that they have at wide receiver for guys not to be touching the ball. You got to get the ball into your playmakers' hands so they can do what they do.
Well, that said, not everybody has been heaping praise on Michigan, I guess we should say, for the hire. Paul Feinbaum always has an opinion when it comes to Jim Harbaugh, it seems, and you see it up there on your screen. I don't think there is a good fit with Jim Harbaugh, but I think McElwain needed to get a job because he was completely forgotten about. I still think Jim McElwain's a good football coach. I just think he was a terrible fit for Florida. I think he'll help Michigan. I don't think it would take much to restart the Michigan offense. So as far as, what do they call that? Faint praise or praising by damning or whatever they call it. Anyway, I mean, that's about what it is for Paul Feinbaum, and so there are the skeptics out there as it pertains to the Michigan offense.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, listen, Jim Harbaugh, right now, that offensive staff has really come under fire, especially from play calling standpoint. And right now, they need some juice. They need some injection of life into that passing game. And again, if you look at what McElwain, look at his career, obviously it was a speed bump at Florida, but if you look at his history at Alabama, he's a guy that can get the job done.
Crazy to think, right? And you mentioned this last week, that those two teams met less than a year ago, and now those two head coaches are on the same staff after McElwain leads Florida to SEC title game appearances in each of his first 2 years. It's crazy. Well, Michigan fans were happy on the hardwood when they beat Michigan State a couple months back, but Michigan State hadn't done too much losing on the hardwood since then. A big victory over Purdue has basically sewn things up for the Spartans to win the regular season in the Big Ten. We know how important the regular season is to Big Ten teams in college basketball. They were one of the last teams to adopt the conference tournament, and they really value the regular season. Michigan State had maybe that tough loss at the beginning of the year to Duke, but they had some strong performances after that. Maybe as good of a team as Tom Izzo's had in a long time at Michigan State.
Yeah, and that's saying a lot. If you look at Tom Izzo's past teams, I mean, he's put together some really talented teams in the past. And this team that he has right now, I think, is probably the best one he's ever had. But again, you know, a lot comes when you have such a talented team. You know, they struggled a little bit against Wisconsin. Obviously, they had that huge comeback against Northwestern, which was an unbelievable game. I mean, Cassius Winston, he put up 17 points, 7 assists, and 9 rebounds. Nick Ward had a double-double in that game. Probably the greatest comeback in basketball history, at least in the Big Ten. And they really solidified themselves as, you know, the number 2 team in the country after that. Obviously, Michigan beat the number 8 team in Ohio State. That knocked Ohio State out to believe now they're ranked 16th in the nation. But now that helped Michigan State really solidify that top spot in the Big Ten.
Before we get to our look at the state of the program and a couple other things we want to cover right here, let's just check back in on the league as a whole as it pertains to college basketball. We were here about a month or two ago and talking about, well, the Big Ten needs some marquee wins, and then Michigan puts one up against UCLA, and then again against Texas. Has the Big Ten kind of reformed itself in the national eyes since a couple months ago?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think most people thought Ohio State was going to be a doormat of the Big Ten, and you look at what they've accomplished in their first year under a new head coach. You know, it's always funny when people talk about, you know, the beginning of the season. You know, I remember we talked about it on the show. You know, where was the Big Ten going to be? Because teams like Wisconsin, Iowa were not good. So now you look at where the Big Ten is. You got Michigan State playing really well. You got Michigan playing really well. Obviously, Purdue was playing really well, but now they've kind of lost a couple games. But the Big Ten is right where they want to be at, and that's in the national conversation.
Tough to pick against Tom Izzo and Michigan State come tournament time, although Middle Tennessee fans will tell you, well, maybe not. It was tough to pick against Ohio State in football this year for the college football playoff, but that's what the committee did. We know how that turned out with Alabama, and the rest, as they say, is history. Speaking of history, might be historic heights that the Ohio State assistant coaches are going to get paid this season in football. Have you seen some of these numbers? I mean, Schiano staying and not taking the Patriots job, that kind of makes sense to think that he probably gets a large raise, and large might not really do it justice. It's enormous.
It's enormous.
But
I mean,
they're paying a boatload of money to assistant football coaches.
1.5 million, I believe Schiano is going to get in 2018. I think that's like an $800,000 bump in pay. But yeah, I mean, right now, you know, college football, it's an arms race. It's all about who has the best facilities. And you guess what? You better have a really good coaching staff to go along with those great facilities, because at the end of the day, it's all about development. And Urban Meyer and his staff is as good as anybody in the country when it comes to development. And right now, you want to keep those coaches you know, on your staff, because that helps you with stability in your program that locks guys in.
Take your comments, as always, Atlanta 10 Live on our Facebook page, and we'll interact with you guys throughout the course of the rest of the show. Plenty of opportunities for that. Before we switch gears, though, and begin our look at the state of the program, on to the Wisconsin Badgers. See what I did there? On Wisconsin. We are on Atlanta 10 Live this week, and each and every week at this time. You can check us out on our Atlanta 10 Live Facebook page, 6 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Central, or any time on demand. All right, let's hit it hard and talk about Wisconsin and the state of the program. I guess I'll lead off and give you this statement. I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this on air, but I think we agree, and we've talked about it off air, that Barry Alvarez built this program out of nothing, and it might never have been in better footing than it's ever been right now as far as fan base satisfaction, the coaching staff that you have in place, the national recognition. I don't know if Wisconsin is ever going to win a national championship, but this is about as good as it gets in Madtown.
Well, I mean, especially considering what's happened in the past. I mean, you lose Gary Anderson, you lose Brett Bielema. Both those coaches go to other programs. And in this case, the grass isn't green on the other side. Both those coaches are now looking for jobs. And, of course, you insert Paul Chryst, who now has, taken that team to 13-1. I mean, they're probably one of the most consistent teams in the Big Ten other than Ohio State. Now, granted, they do play in the Big Ten West, but at the end of the day, you can only play what's on your schedule. And Wisconsin has done really well in recruiting. They find the guys who fit the Wisconsin mold. They play really well together, and they've been really consistent. I mean, if you're a Wisconsin fan, you have to be happy with the direction of the program.
Well, I want to jump ahead to the recruiting comment that you just made, though. Look, Wisconsin was 9th in the Big Ten this year in recruiting. It's one thing to say, hey, we take these guys, we coach them up, we recruit the players that we need for our program, but coming off probably the best season in program history to be 9th in the Big Ten, does that matter to Wisconsin that didn't get a bounce in recruiting coming off a year like that?
Well, again, it should. I mean, we're talking about Paul Chryst and the consistency he's had at the program. Again, they go 13-1 with the guys that they have. I mean, literally, they're one win away from being in the college football playoffs with the team that they have. So, yeah, I know that the recruiting rankings, but look at a guy like Jonathan Taylor, who at one point was committed to Rutgers before he flipped and decided to go to Wisconsin. Look at the success that he's had. So, Wisconsin is not going to get caught up in the recruiting rankings. They're going to recruit to their culture. They're going to recruit the guys that make Wisconsin, and they're always going to be successful because of that, just like Michigan State. Michigan State doesn't have a top 5 recruiting class, but they always recruit guys that fit their mold, that help Michigan State be Michigan State.
In this era of the college football playoff, I want to rewind a little bit to the statement I made, and you guys can sound off as well. Atlanta 10 Live Facebook page. Is a realistic goal for the Wisconsin Badgers to win a national championship in this day and age, or is the realistic goal to win a Big Ten championship? Be honest.
Well, listen, when I played, this is ages ago, we focused on winning the Big Ten. That's what our focus was on. Our focus was on winning the Big Ten championship, because once you solidify that, everything else will take care of everything else. So you can't start looking at national championships. We need to win the national championships. You need to win your games. Win your games, and everything else will take care of itself. And that's the position I think that Wisconsin and their coaches find themselves in year after year, because they're always going to be in the thick of things. One, because they're in the Big Ten West. It's not a very strong conference, so let's just say it's not a very strong conference, so let's just say it is what it is. But they're always going to be in the thick of things. They're always going to be able to compete with some of the best teams in the country, especially in their non-conference schedule when they're playing against teams like LSU and all these other SEC teams.
Well, but that's just the thing. I mean, first of all, I understand what you're saying about Michigan, and this takes care of itself, but you've got the history, the aura of Michigan. Wisconsin doesn't have the same kind of football history that Michigan does, at least nothing like it in the past 100 years. I don't know, maybe about the past 10 years or something like that. But then the other thing is that non-conference scheduling. Yes, they had success in that game against LSU. They played LSU in what was essentially a home and home, although at neutral site games. But they often, and this year is a great example of it, did not schedule enough out of conference that things did, quote unquote, take care of themselves. Although I guess we wouldn't know had they beaten Ohio State for the Big Ten championship. But I don't know if that's easy enough for Wisconsin to say that everything could just fall into place.
Well, listen, if Wisconsin beats Ohio State, they're in. Right? There's no question about that. If Wisconsin beats Ohio State, they're in. You can only play the teams that's on your schedule. And right now, we've gone back and forth. The College Football Playoff Committee does conference championships matter. I think in that instance, it definitely would have mattered, because they would have beaten a very good Ohio State team. So, again, win your games and everything else will take care of itself.
So hold on a second. I'm foggy on this, right, because we're in basketball season and whatnot, and I hadn't expected to go here in the conversation. But you're telling me that if Wisconsin beat Ohio State to win the Big Ten championship, that we would have a different national champion right now. Is that not what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying it. I said that they would be in. They would have went into the college football playoffs. I didn't say they would have won.
No,
I said they would have went in.
But then what? Alabama wouldn't have got in?
I don't think so.
So my point is,
would we've had a different national champion?
Right?
Yes, we would have.
And if Wisconsin gets in, would they have been deserving, knowing what we knew about Alabama?
That's a lot of foreshadowing, Sam.
I'm
just saying. I think if Wisconsin would have beat Ohio State, it would have been really hard to keep Wisconsin out of the college football playoffs.
It's a good point. I just wonder what the repercussions would be on a larger scale. That's what happens when we go off the cuff here. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to spend some time with the rest of our State of the Program series today on Maryland. We'll do that in just a couple minutes. A couple tidbits as we get set for the NFL Combine and looking ahead to the NFL Draft. And do want to remind you that you're watching Land of 10 live right here each and every Tuesday night, 6 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Central, or on demand anytime on our Land of 10 Live Facebook page. Waiting for you guys. If you want to sound off with us on some of these comments on Wisconsin, we'll keep that opportunity open for you. Let's start here, though, when we start talking about some of these off-the-field things. Good story, good-natured story. We talk about this Laureus Award, and there's a full story up on our Land of 10 Live page about this. You saw the wave that Iowa did this year where the fans turned around and they waved to the Children's Hospital facing away from the field. And now that's continuing to kind of get some off-the-field attention. I love nothing more in sports than when it intertwines between the fans and the players on the field and the programs to make us as fans feel like we can relate to you guys as athletes. And I think that was a really cool moment where that happened this year. So I'm happy to see that story continuing to grow. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are stories that it kind of takes you away from the game a little bit, because we get so caught up into football and sports in general, and we forget about the little things. We forget about the people that we're affecting that are not able to do the simple things that we're able to do on a normal basis. So it's always great to see videos like that. It's always great to see moments like that, because it really puts sports in perspective. Because sometimes when you talk about sports in the grander scheme, it's all about business, it's all about money, and it's always great when you can focus on stories like that. You played for Coach Carr, and of course it was his grandson, right, who had the big interaction with the Michigan football team and then the Mott Children's Hospital. Then I know players on your team, Charles Woodson was very involved with that. Did you get involved with that organization when you were on campus? Yeah, I did. I did get involved with the Mott Children's Hospital when I was on campus. You know, it's nothing to take a moment of your time to go and try to inspire and talk to kids, because again, they're going through something that me personally, I've never experienced and probably will never have to go through. So when you look at your life and you look at the things that you have to go through personally versus someone who literally who can't get out of the bed, they're sick, they need the motivation. And so when you see kids' eyes light up, it just makes everything worth it, and it just puts everything in perspective. All right, here's some fun stuff. That's the serious stuff. And it's good, it's a good story, but here's some fun stuff. Let's look at some of these NFL draft projections. You seeing some of this stuff? Josh Jackson, cornerback from Iowa, projected 7th in the NFL draft, and Saquon Barkley projected number 9 to the 49ers. What do you think about those two? Listen, I mean, Jackson had an unbelievable year. I mean, you talk about putting together a year where you literally come from out of nowhere to just vaulting yourself into the NFL draft, making yourself a top 10 pick, and you look at a guy like Saquon Barkley, who was on everybody's Heisman radar, who everyone knew was going to be probably a top 10, top 5 pick. You just never know. Nowadays, I mean, you can have one great season, and that one great season can literally change your life. Well, he had one great game, right? I mean, they beat Ohio State, keep them out of the national championship. He's got that one interception, right, looking like Odell Beckham Jr., and boom, that probably made him a lot. And it put him on the map. It absolutely. I mean, he was already playing, already having a great season prior to that. But that game in that environment against Ohio State really put him on the map. What kind of NFL prospect is Saquon Barkley? He's going to be. I think he's going to be amazing. I mean, usually when you look at guys, especially bigger running backs, because the hole in the NFL opens up and closes really fast. So you always worry about really big running backs. But Saquon Barkley, he's really shifty. He understands how to set up his blocks really well. I think he's going to be an outstanding pro. What would you? I've never asked you this before. What advice would you give to a guy who was a standout in college, like you were, leading that national championship team in rushing and performance you had in the Hula Bowl? What's different about the first time they hit the field in the NFL?
Everyone is faster. The game is that much faster. You've got guys who are 34 years old, 2 kids, 400 pounds, and they run just as fast as you do. It's literally, it's a grown man's sport. It's like going from, you see the difference going from high school to college. It's a big gap, but the gap between college and NFL, I mean, it's enormous. I couldn't believe how fast everyone was. I mean, linebackers, defensive linemen. I got chased down by a defensive lineman in my practice with the Broncos. That was embarrassing, but it kind of put everything into perspective for me.
It's good stuff. Hey, one more thing to get to before we turn our attention back to the state of the program in Maryland. We're talking about recruiting and Wisconsin's efforts in recruiting and whether or not it makes a difference. Have you seen this with Ohio State and these graphic design programs that they have now with recruiting? I mean, this is so different, right, than the kind of stuff that you had when you were getting recruited. Look at that. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that kids are looking at to pick colleges. What does that say?
Well, listen, I mean, you know, in this day and age of recruiting, kids want to see progress. They want to see development. They want to see, they don't, not only do they want you to talk about what you've done, they want to see what you've done. And when you look at these graphics that Ohio State has produced, what I take from that is lineage. What I take from that is seeing guys go from, you know, high school standouts to NFL stars. And that's what guys want to see. And in these graphics, does it help? It helps a little bit when you can visualize, you can see yourself, but at the end of the day, it's all about the lineage. Because if you look at Ohio State, they have not really had a hiccup when it comes to drafts, right? They have not really had a hiccup when it comes to sending cornerbacks to the NFL. Defensive linemen, offensive linemen, they've never had a hiccup as far as running backs, right? They've never had a hiccup as far as putting guys into the NFL. So when you're able to show that kind of lineage to recruits, it makes it that much easier to get them to sign that piece of paper.
Well, I know Michigan spent a lot of time, you've talked about this before, right, where they worked with a marketing firm when Harbaugh came on board, and then everything they did with changing their image with Drake and all the other hip-hop guys they had involved. Harbaugh sitting on top of that virtual Block M over the stadium and whatnot. So it's a big deal in this day and age in recruiting. We'll keep an eye on this stuff as it continues to develop. We'll turn our attention back to the state of the program, but do want to remind you that you're watching Land at 10 Live right here on our Land at 10 Live Facebook page. 6 o'clock every Tuesday evening Eastern Time, 5 o'clock every Tuesday Eastern, 5 o'clock Central, and anytime on demand. All right, Maryland Terrapins did not get to bowl eligibility, did have that great win against Texas early in the season. It seems like every year we're talking about injuries, particularly at the quarterback position. Where do Maryland fans feel right now? Where do they sit with looking at their program under DJ Durkin?
Well, I mean, listen, I think it's kind of twofold. I mean, you have to be excited on one hand because you got DJ Durkin, who's one of the best recruiters in college football. He's a young guy, young, energetic guy, and a really good coach, and he understands how to win. But, you know, you also have to be very despondent because you've been kind of snake bitten when you have, 3-4 quarterbacks get injured, and pretty much there goes your season. I mean, Maryland opened up really hot to an unbelievable start. They started off the season 3-1 and then just went downhill, but that was largely because of injuries at the quarterback position, and when you're unable to sustain drives, it's going to affect your defense, and then their defense kind of folded up 10 as well. So if you're a Maryland fan, you know, I would still hold on to faith because DJ Durkin is the guy for that program, but unfortunately you got to have a little bit of luck start happening going your way as well. You know, Maryland, even in prior administrations, definitely had talent that made it to the NFL. I mean, you think about some high draft picks they had, particularly at the skill positions. Vernon Davis was a tight end that played at Maryland. Darius Hayward-Bay. Yep. So they've had that track record, and DJ Durkin is an excellent, not a good, but an excellent recruiter, as evidenced by the fact that Maryland gets in the top 30 in the country in recruiting. What does it take, though, beyond just having those few guys to really get up and over that hump to compete in admittedly the more difficult division in the Big Ten? Well, I mean, first of all, they got to try to keep everyone healthy, and that's really been the biggest challenge for Maryland. The second thing they have to do is there's a lot of talent coming out of the DMV area, and they've got to try to lock down that talent and keep guys like Michigan and Ohio State from going in there and pillaging all the goods. So that's the first thing, and second thing they need to do is, again, protect their own borders, keep those in-state guys in, and then also expand their recruiting map so that they can start hitting places like Texas and Florida, similar to what Scott Frost has been able to do at Nebraska in his first go-round. So DJ Durkin, I mean, he's got Matt Canada now, who's now the offensive coordinator. I think they'll be really good on offense if they can get Kasim Hill back healthy. I think they'll be fine.
Well, there's always that with Maryland, and then you look at the off-the-field stuff, or it's on the field, I guess, but not about the performance. What about Maryland and its image and those jerseys and the state flag? How's that play into the state of the program for Maryland?
I don't know. I like when they go to the all-black uniforms. I'm a real big fan of the all-black uniforms, but I have to say I think their regular uniforms is definitely an acquired taste.
And I take it from your comment that you haven't acquired that taste.
I have an acquired taste.
You couldn't see yourself in one of those, what were you, number 7?
No, I couldn't. Well, the black ones, the all black ones, yes. The white ones are not too bad. I can roll with the white ones.
The number 7 with the half shirt, you get that up?
8. That's
number 8.
Yeah, that's Chris. 7 is Chris Floyd. 8 is Chris Howard.
There you go. Sorry, I got to.
How long have we been doing this show together? Confused with Chris Floyd?
Well, you never show up in a jersey. I mean, Sorry, it's been a while. Anyway, as you said. Well, that's our look at Maryland. You guys want to sound off, you can do that here on our Atlanta 10 Live Facebook page. Probably the best comment that we've had so far today. I'll share this from Tim Wise. I thought Harbaugh was so good he would just win championships by showing up. And so again, we're talking about Michigan and Jim McElwain and what it takes to get the offense on track. But whether that comment is tongue-in-cheek or not, I mean, that has been the perception that Michigan's offense would dramatically be different under Jim Harbaugh. With what he did to Jake Rudock that first year, you thought, well, maybe that is going to work out. But then it seems like the offense has kind of hit a decline.
Well, again, the perception when Harbaugh came into Michigan, everyone, thought championships would be falling out of the sky when he signed. But the state of the program was in much distress than people really realized. And there was a lot that culture-wise that Harbaugh had to come in and change. I mean, he had to come in and get these kids to really believe that they could win. Obviously, they start the game off against not Maryland, but who's the Utah. They lose that first game, but then again, they go on a nice win streak. They lose a tough one against Michigan State with the punt. But it took time to really build. The 2016 season, in my opinion, was the season that they really should have gotten to the college football playoffs because of the defense that they had. But again, the thing that's always held Michigan back and continues to hold Michigan back is the offensive line. In good games against good teams, you have to be able to run the ball because teams are going to load up the box. They're going to play man coverage. They're going to dare you to run the ball because they understand that you're not a very good passing team. And in those situations, those teams have to rise to the top and beat good teams by running the ball.
Wow, this is too easy. But the other thing that holds Michigan back lately has been Ohio State.
That too.
It was Iowa that held Ohio State back. This year, we'll look at Iowa next week as our State of the Program series continues. We'll also take a look at Rutgers and look forward to chatting with you guys on our Atlanta 10 Live Facebook page. I'll find my voice before next week's show. For Chris, I'm Sam. Thanks to the guys on the other side of the glass. There's my wave at them. See you next week on Atlanta 10 Live. Cough button.